Hey guys, what's up? This is Yosef at 52Frames. Just wanted to give you another coffee and critique. This time from our fresh off the press Golden Hour album, week 14, Magic Hour, which is an absolutely beautiful album. And I wanted to go and give you a special coffee and critique this week and try and focus on one particular topic. Thank you to Avner for coming up with this interesting concept. And the concept that I'd like to focus on is focus. Avner pointed out that a lot of his critiques and a lot of critiques that he sees in the album from the community are focus-based. So he wanted to know if I can give a coffee and critique that's kind of giving a critique on the photos, but also keeping in mind these different aspects of focus. So before I jump into this, I just wanted to thank our patrons. This is a live view of our 52 Frames Patreon page. We now have over 70 patrons giving over $500 a month towards a project, which is more than halfway to our goal, which is so exciting. Thank you so much to you guys. I'm actually reaching out to a developer right now to try and build ourselves a home off of Facebook. Really exciting news for the near future. And all of you that have pledged the $10 level or above, I am happy to report that the t-shirt store is up and running and we're gonna get you your t-shirts as soon as possible. So look out for that. Okay, I'd like to thank, in no particular order, the patrons that have supported us since our last screencast: Zvi, Heather, Bonnie, Benzion, Dawn and Brent, Jonathan, Marina, Mary Jane, Ann, Dave, Bree, Tom, Yael, Lonnie, Alexa, Tonda, Julie, Ruth, Liz, Anna, Josie, Guy, and Crystal. You guys, thank you for believing in the vision of this project. Thank you for your support. And I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. Okay, Golden Hour. This challenge is one of my favorites, and this year, once again, it did not disappoint. Really just a beautiful time to shoot, regardless of your gear or skill level. And there were really some amazing submissions this week. Okay, so I'm just gonna pull out a couple with the intention of focusing on focus. I'm sorry that pun keeps slipping out. It's actually not intended. Okay, so here we have, so you guys, if you put your names in your file name, then I can know who you are, which makes things a little bit easier. I think this is a very good example of missed focus. Your EXIF actually isn't available here, but it does look like a very wide aperture, meaning a very shallow depth of field. And we can see here that the focus is just behind this mini Eiffel Tower here. You can see the stones here are focused. That's a little bit too zoomed, which is just behind your subject, especially when you're dealing with a narrow depth of field, which we'll see with some of the other photos here. It's super important to get that very narrow plane on your subject so that your subject is in focus. This is a really lovely photo, and here we see pretty tack sharp focus. You notice the banister in the foreground and the wall in the background are not in focus, and even here is further away from that plane of focus. Let's see if we can see an aperture, 1.8. So also very narrow aperture, but because of the way you shot it, you have what you want to show us. Your subject is very well in focus. Good job, person, entry 16 person. Another great example, very narrow depth of field, and you have your subjects here, which in this case are the bottom of the glass, tack sharp focus, really nice blurry background. Very good way to shoot that. Here's another example of tack sharp focus. This is really one of my favorite photos of the album. And if you zoom in, you can see also narrow, very shallow depth of field. The nose here is blurred. The ear back here is blurred. The background, very blurred. I imagine this was a long focal length, which will also affect your depth of field. Longer focal length will give you a narrower depth of field. Real quick, 600. Okay, 600, that's about as long as you can get. Three things that will affect your depth of field, which will make it more shallow real quick. One is your focal length. Okay, one is the aperture. That most people know. The wider the aperture. And the third thing is the distance from your subject to the camera. So even though this is 1.8, because the stairs are a little bit further away, you have a little bit more latitude. Because this is 600 millimeter focal length, you have very little latitude and your depth of field will be quite shallow. So really nice job. Okay, so this one I wanted to point out by Ruth. On the surface, it does look a bit in focus, but if you zoom in, you can see your subject here, I'm assuming, are the hands, the cup, this woman over here. The focus is behind her on the window here. You can see the window is in focus, the wall's in focus, her shoe is quite in focus. The hands, though, it looks like you missed the focal point there. So even though I'm zooming in and pixel peeping, it doesn't matter. The human eye sees right away, even if you don't know why. It sees that something is amiss, even if it's millimeters. That's what's crazy about photography, is that will show in the photo and the human brain will perceive it, even if you don't know exactly what is wrong with it. Another great example, and if you zoom into this photo, you can see that her right eye is actually quite in focus and her left eye is not. And this is very common. This was shot with a relatively wide aperture of 2.2 on the beautiful 50 millimeter 1.8 lens. And if you're going to have one eye in focus, it's better to have the eye closer to the camera, which is a very interesting rule. Obviously, with all rules, you could do whatever you want. But I find that this holds up. It is more pleasing to the eye, to the viewer's eye, when the subject's closer eye is in focus rather than the further one, which I think is kind of right in this case. I'm not really sure, but it looks like the way she's tilted here, it does look like the right eye is the closer eye. Really nice job of getting that focus on the eye because you can see. I mean, we're talking about millimeters here. If you look at the actual detail in the eye, here, if I may zoom in an insane amount, you see the lines here in the iris, and here those lines are blurred. So I mean, we're really talking about millimeters here. So you ask, well, how can you possibly tell when you're shooting, especially on the back small LCD of your camera, if you're getting that focus? Well, sometimes you can't. And that's why it's better, especially when shooting moving subjects like this, is to just snap away. You're not snapping as in guessing, but you're getting a moment and you're snapping so that the subtleties of these millimeters, one of those will come in more focus than other ones. Okay, moving right along, I'll give you a couple other nice examples here. This is a really lovely photo. What I want to point out here is that it does seem like your focal plane here is this dried brush over here in front of the wire, but the wire isn't quite far enough away that it's just blurred. So it kind of just looks out of focus. So what are we meant to look at here? Are we meant to look at the brush or the barbed wire? And in this case, I'm not really sure because they're quite close to one another. Maybe if you focus on the barbed wire, it would be a totally different photo. I'm not saying anything is right or wrong. I'm saying that it is a little distracting because the depth of field isn't blurring the background enough here that the human brain is able to perceive very clearly, oh, this is the subject, that's the background. So something to keep in mind when you're placing your subjects in the frame. Here's another beautiful example, tack sharp focus. Again, this photographer here, do you have your name? I don't see your name, but I assume your initials are SJC. I'll try and figure out a system how to get your names here. But you're really showing us only what you want to show us, and that really is a beautiful imagery that you've crafted here. This one, I would just like to point something else out, and I see this often, with processing. It's sometimes a lot of fun to really push it, and it's also a very creative exercise. So I am really sensitive to step on anyone's toes because even though this is a photography project, and when you over process and make something super abstract or mixed media, it does deviate slightly, it would identify a little bit further away from the realm of proper photography. But if you're being creative, like that's at the end of the day, that's all I want from you. Is I just want people to sit down, take some time in their lives and be creative and have fun. So if you're having fun over processing things and making things with funky filters and all that jazz, go ahead. Don't make me stop you. But I do want to point out that it does take away from the notion of proper photography, let's say. And it comes down to what are natural colors, what are natural highlights. When I look at this photo, it does look to me very yellow, very green. It looks like the shadows are crunched, and more importantly, the highlights are muted. And if we look at the histogram here, we see this whole right portion of the wave is gone. And when the eye looks at this scene, the brain gets confused, because when you're looking at a sunset, it's never this dull, it's not this dark, right? I mean, it's a cool image, and I think your processing was very intentional. So I'm not saying right or wrong here, but in the realm of photography, it does seem like an implausible scenario. And what that does to the human brain is it confuses you a little bit. So I think if you tweaked it less. Now I'm gonna go ahead and now tweak over your tweaks. So we'll see if this pans out here. But to me, that sky already looks more believable. This right side of the histogram is now filled in. The highlights are present, and I think the human brain can be in this scene more. If I could apply a effect to this bottom portion of the image as well, maybe make it more blue, make it look a bit more like water, and raise the shadows a bit, get rid of a little bit of that crunch while maybe keeping some of that mid-tone clarity, because I do like this crunchy detail that you have here. But to my eye, that already seems a bit more plausible. What am I raising here? Now, this is just closer to the way I would process it, because you have now nice complementary blue and orange. The water looks genuine. The sky looks genuine. And I mean, look, even if I took this here, let me put on my highlight warning here. So now we're clipping here, right? If I move the highlights up, we're clipping. That's loss of data. But you know what? Some loss of data is okay, because it does look like a more natural scene. We'll just go to the before and the after here. And that's just a critique to my own eye, my own opinion. Again, if you want to go all out and process and make it chunky and crazy and filtery, do it. Have fun with it. It's crafting your own image, and that's, that makes me so happy. But in the realm of photography, you don't want to deviate too much from what the natural scene looks like. And when you push things like HDR too much, and suddenly the sky is darker than the foreground, your brain gets turned upside down and something seems askew. Okay, just wanted to point out these last three examples here. This guy is another really good example. Look how narrow the plane of focus here. Very shallow depth of field. It's just this tiny strip of focus. Everything in front of the focus and everything behind it is blurred. And you got your little thing here. Is that Skeletor? I don't know what that is. I feel dumb if everybody knows what that is, but you place him right in the exact spot where he's in focus. So really good job. Here's another example. 1.8 with what looks like very bright sun. I'm not even quite sure how you did that with not super strong shutter speed. Perhaps you had some filters on your camera, and really, really nice focus on the dog. And the last photo I'll point out, I really connect to this, maybe because I'm from New York, because it looks like a classic Manhattan scene, but I really like the way you're looking up. I love these leading lines here, and you use the time of day in a different kind of way, and I really love this twilight time of day because the headlights and the artificial lights really pop out of the scene, and really nice job with focus throughout. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this coffee and critique screencast. I'd really like to do more and more of these, so bear with me. And if you are not in our 52 Frames community, I ask, why not? It is now For the very low cost of free, as it always will be, join us for a weekly photo challenge in your inbox at 52frames.com. And until next time, you guys, happy shooting.